Why should we learn our strengths? That's what we're going to talk about today. Hi, this is Jill from the North Woods, talking about how we can be the heroes of our stories, fix our lives, get focused on the things that matter the most, one small step at a time. The topic of knowing your strengths became important to me when I was a kid because I realized at some point there's things I'm good at and there's things I'm not so good at. And there are things my friends were good at that I wasn't good at. And if you didn't know what those were, you didn't really have a direction in life. Now, I'll talk about the direction in two different directions, well, maybe actually three different directions. Because when you know what you're good at, you will be able to commit to doing those things and doing them very well. Lean into your strengths. I think that's important too when we look for jobs, when we look for college majors. Now, one of the things that became obvious to me, and this was my very first lesson in this, was actually the reverse. I was terrible at writing. And it's not that I can't get by. I do get by. I've taken classes to get by. I can do by. It is a struggle for me. It causes me to spend enormous amounts of time writing, and I struggle through it. And like we talked about in How to Learn, sometimes that struggling process is good, but I never really got better at it. I got better at it, but I never got great at it. Let me tell you, when I first started doing this podcast, I would record the podcast, and let's say it would take me 2 hours to record, edit, everything else like that. And a friend of mine who got me started in podcasting felt that having show notes and a blog article, which I do for every one of these, was one of the most important things, so they could go back and find out what you said, remember it, put it in a notebook, copy it out, something there tangible that they can take away from what it is you were teaching. And I went to her website many a time, and I still do, because I'm like, oh, didn't she talk about how to do this? I go to her website, I find the article on how she does it, and then I'll go do it myself. And it was taking me hours. So if I took 2 hours to produce this whole podcast, it was taking maybe 4 hours for me to write an article to put on my blog. Now, I'm not good at it, and I never was good at it. But you know what I was good at? This is where I felt it. I can do math naturally in my head, and I'm very good at math. And my dad used to do quizzes with me where he would say, okay, like we were doing on a road trip. I have a baseball, and let's say that the earth is this many miles around, and I'm going to throw the baseball 3 feet above the ground. How many miles does that baseball go? And I would sit there and do the math in my head. I think it was a method for him to just get me to shut up and keep quiet, but it worked. I'm really good at math, and I've always been good at math. Understanding scientific principles. I am very good at that too. I was in honors astronomy. I made it all the way through to the top levels of astronomy in undergraduate school. And then I bailed out of it because there was essentially no jobs. But science is something that comes very easily to me. I'm very good at technology. I don't know why I'm not doing a technology podcast, but I'm good at technology too. And I started realizing these are things Jill is good at, and writing, grammar, Jill is not very good at. And so I started separating out and learning for myself how I can figure it out. Why does this become important? Because then at that point in school, I leaned into science, math, and then eventually computers, because I knew I was good at it. And it wasn't just about my interests. It was about where my interests met what I was good at. And it was good for my psychology, because I think I felt like a failure in writing because I just never got there. I would write something, but it was very, I'm good at technical writing, right? The button that goes over here connects to this, and I would be able to write that, but it wasn't amazing. I would listen to my classmates who, some of them were very good writers, and I go, how are they producing that? That's amazing. And I do that today when I do read a lot of books, and I read an amazing sentence. I'm like, how did they do that? That is stunning. I'm reading John Muir's book about his first summer in Yosemite. Really amazing writer. And like I said, will not get there. I just will not. So that was important for me to learn what I was good at besides interests. What am I good at? And I think my interest then followed the things I became good at. And so that was an important step for me, because then I suddenly, instead of feeling like a failure all the time, I figured out where I could succeed. and where I continue to succeed. It always kind of frustrated me to an extent because my GPA was never very good, because I would get A's in science and math and eventually computers, and I would get C's in writing class, and I would get great grades in actually reading literature. I'm a great reader. And it would be frustrating to me I'm like, can't you just look at my strengths? But schools then eventually, when I ended up going to college, did look at my strengths. I was recruited by the military to go in because I was in the top levels when eventually I started testing for college in math and science. I was in the 99.99 whatever percentile for math and science. And so eventually at some point, and that's what becomes kind of good about life, is your life starts focusing in on your strengths. Not just, like I said, what you like, your hobbies, the things that you enjoy, but what is it that you're good at? And so then the question comes in, how can you figure out what it is you are good at? Now, for me, it was easy. I looked at my grades and I went, ooh, bad at this, good at that. But I also knew innately what lit me up. When I would read science journals, when I would look at math problems, I was excited. I loved it. And that made me happy. But sometimes it's not so easy for us to do that, because for me, it was very clear at that point, math, science, and computers. That's the thing I'm good at. But the question is, if you're not so clear, sometimes the best step is asking friends and coworkers, what do you think my best traits are? And I have been surprised in the past, because when I've been in jobs and I would do something, I would have coworkers say, Jill, you are fantastic at getting in a room of people and getting them together, of working at them so that they work out a problem that was unsolvable and getting them to work together. You are good at public speaking and getting up in front of groups of people and taking this point about this story and then bringing it home to where they'll walk away with things that they can take away and use. And so it turned out that I was good at other things that I never knew about. And how did I find out? Coworkers, performance reviews, talking to people. That's some things. Then there's some other tools that you can use. One of the most interesting tools is that there is called the Clifton Strengths. There's a book called Strength Finders 2.0. That book's a little bit interesting, and let me tell you about why that's different. I can say Jill's good at math and science and this and that and the other thing, but the answers that you get from this Clifton Strength Finder 2.0 book are weird, obscure things. Like, I was a lifetime learner. I am someone, and it's true, wants to learn throughout my life. I am never giving that up. I continue to learn today. What do I watch on TV? What do I watch on YouTube? What books do I read where I can learn something I didn't know a thing about? And most of them are things that if you had guessed about me, you would say, yeah, Jill, that's what Jill is. You would have guessed those things. Except one of them, and I forgot what the name was, but the idea was I can see the gears turn. Okay, so I'm on the road driving and I go, well, that person's over here, that person's over here, this person's moving in, and I can see 10 steps above, this is going to turn into a crash. And I can, get in the left lane and avoid this because there's going to be a slamming on the brakes. I'm good with that, and people too. They're going to do this. They're going to do this next thing. Then they're going to go quit their job. And then that happens. I'm very good at seeing the gears of life turn and figuring out. I always feel like it's a superpower in being able to tell the future, not because you have a special power, but because you can see what's going to happen. It's like playing chess, 11 turns ahead. You're going to see what's going to happen next. Then there's some other different tests out there, but one of them is also called the high five test, and it's free. You can find it online. The idea is that it talks a little bit more about your practical strengths for daily work. There's all sorts of tests and assessments out there, but that's another good way of finding out what your strengths are. I have to say, I love personality tests, even though I know some of them aren't very scientific, but I do love taking tests. The next part is what energizes you, what fills you with energy, what makes you excited to do it more. Like I said, when I write, I feel the life draining from my body. But when I do math and science, I love it. And even when I love public speaking, I love doing it. I get nervous like everybody else, but I love doing this kind of thing. So then asking yourself, where do you lose track of time where suddenly it was like 7 o'clock and the next time you look up, it's 11 o'clock at night because you were so engaged in it? I did that last night. I was looking through trying to figure out a computer problem I was having. And I started somewhere around 8 o'clock and I thought, I'm going to go to bed early. I've been kind of tired and dragged out lately. And the next time I looked up, it was 11 o'clock at night. I was late for bed. I was so engrossed in this. That's another great way to figure out where your strengths are, is just observe yourself and other challenges. Where is it that you feel natural, that you feel like you're contributing, where you get great feedback from your projects, where you enjoy repeating that kind of project again? Another great way. But here's the opposite part, and we're going to talk about weaknesses next week. What are you avoiding? There's your not strength. That's what we're going to talk about in weaknesses. But when is a project that you're procrastinating on, that you're avoiding, that when someone at work says, hey, I'm getting a group together and we're going to work on this, and I'm like, not that. What are those things? And sometimes that can help you avoid those things, but also see that those really aren't your strengths. Now that I know what my strengths are, now what do I do? So there's 2 ways to go about it. Like I said, actually 3 ways. So the first way is you can lean into those strengths. I started realizing at my work what my strengths were. And this came at a very interesting time. And this was just a few years ago. There was a woman at work and everybody admired her. She got promoted quickly through the ranks. I could feel the footprints up here kind of thing. I'm the one who trained her, and then I watched her climb right over me in the corporate ladder. It was not something she did. And in fact, she didn't even want that, I don't think. But what happened is I just kept thinking, I want to be her. And so I started writing down ways that I could be more like her. What does she do that's remarkable? How could I act in ways that are more like her? And I decided I'm just going to be more like her at work because I want to get promoted. And if I'm more like her, the owner of the company will like me like they like her, right? And then something interesting happened. We ended up going on a trip together, and this trip was particularly dicey. So I had this job where if a customer was having a struggle, I would go out to that customer and I would run these camps where I would meet with individual groups of people. Then I would get all their questions, all their struggles, all the problems they were having. Then I would get together in front of everybody, like it maybe be like 100 people, and I would present to them the analysis of where their company was going, what was going right, what was going wrong, where they should focus their energies, where they're really struggling and they need help. And that was what I did. And I got up in front of this group and I gave this 2-hour presentation and told them what was going right and wrong. And I saw a lot of head nodding, a lot of people whose voices were not getting heard in this organization. And I brought their voices out. And like I said, leadership was happy. The people who were the employees of the company were happy. And it was one of my most fulfilling trips I took out to a customer site ever. And we were sitting at the airport and I was eating Chinese food at the airport. And she looked at me, she goes, Jill, what you did today was amazing. I could never do what you just did. Here's the person I am trying to be more like telling me that what I did was amazing today. And the vice president of the company was there too. And she says, yeah, Jill, that was amazing. You did great. I have never seen anything like that. You were able to instantaneously figure out what was right, what was wrong, bring everyone together, and then give them, I had to write a 30-page paper when I got back about this trip, about how they could come together and do better. And I thought, wow, she said there's something here that I can do that she can't do. And maybe I'm doing this wrong. Instead of me becoming her, I should become the best version of me. And that's when that whole message is about strength that I learned when I was probably in 7th and 8th grade finally gelled with me. I really need to lean into this even more. Why am I struggling to become more like her when I can struggle less and become the best version of me? And that's at that point is what I started doing. I got 2 promotions after that point. People were booking my time to have me come out to their sites and do the same kinds of things for them. That really sort of made my name in that company because suddenly I was good at something that was uniquely me. And that's where I started learning into it. Now we're going to talk about weaknesses the next time, but that's the point, is you start learning more. You become the best version of you by studying, learning more, understanding better, and leaning into your strengths instead of trying to become somebody else, trying to be this other person. Now, maybe that other person has good lessons for you to learn. This coworker I have taught me great lessons in how to be a great worker in my company, but I was taking the wrong message from it. Take what you can, suck out the life of it, incorporate it into your soul, and then become the best version of you. There's so many different things that we can do in our lives. I don't think this was always true. You know, people back, I would say the 50s, I didn't grow up in the 50s, but it seemed like they were lawyers or they were accountants or they were doctors or they were this or they were that. We live in this era where every possibility is right there before us. And the question is, can we grasp the thing we're good at and lean into it and become that? Let me give one other piece of warning about that. I think people walk away and they do it the other way. I want to become this. Let's say I want to become famous on YouTube. I want to be the best TikToker out there in the world. And then they go do it, and maybe they're not very good at it. And they didn't lean into their strengths. They're not very good at public talking. They're not very good at incorporating ideas together. And so, but they just decided this is what I want, and this is the direction I'm going to go in. And it doesn't follow their strengths. Then they get disappointed. Well, I thought I was going to be famous on TikTok and now I'm not. Or I thought I was going to write an amazing Substack that everyone was going to read and nobody read it. I think that's important. Now, there might be reasons, there might be things that you can fix, but the idea is don't go and decide what it is you're going to be. Instead, take a look at your inventory, what you have going on, and then lean right into that and then build what you're going to become. All right, everyone, thanks so much. I appreciate you watching and listening to this podcast. I hope that this is helpful to you. Please remember that you can always email me at jill@startwithsmallsteps.com. You can also go to my website, abetterlifeinsmallsteps.com. That is the site for all my podcasts. You can find every one of them there. And there's even a very small and then there's also a blog there that is written with care. You know, we don't just spit out information to spit out information. We try to make your life better in small steps. Thanks so much. I appreciate you watching.